Remove the tire, 21mm socket. 17mm socket. You're going to undo the caliper bracket to the knuckle, 2 bolts. And then the bottom bolt is right here. So now you can take your caliper off, set it aside, caliper bracket or anything that will make it hang so it doesn't put strain on the flexos. So I like to clean the new calipers up, take them apart, put new caliper grease in the sliders, 14mm wrench and a 14mm socket. Let's break that free on both sides. They do come pre-greased, but sometimes I've seen manufacturer not put enough in. Now this, I can feel the caliper has a little bit of a knocking to it, so I want to make sure that that gets enough grease inside there. That's pretty dry. So get your caliper grease, load up the slider. And then make sure you get some good amount of grease on the inside of that boot. You want the grease to sit inside so in the future it'll lube the pin up as it slides back and forth. Do this to both sides. Slide it down, squeeze it, let the air out. Do the same on that. Next step is to put some caliper grease on the actual bracket where the tins sit, underneath the tins. So I like to see how it has the tab. Put the tab down first, and then just push that right into place. And we'll do the same to the other side. So now I'm going to mount the new bracket on the knuckle part. Put my 2 bolts in. Start it by hand. That's a 17mm socket. We're going to bottom them out, and then we're going to torque it to the factory specs. So once the bolts are flush with the mount, it's 65 foot-pounds from caliper bracket to knuckle. So here are your 2 pads. Rotor is going in this direction, so you always want to put the indicators on the first section of the pad that hits the rotor in the direction it's rotating. So they're going to go on the bottom, and to put those on, there's that little pin right in there, and there's a notch on the pad. So line it up, push it down. So this one's going to go this way. And the inner one is going to go like that. So we're going to put the indicator on the bottom, just like the other side, and do the same on this. Now we're ready to mount our caliper. Take the caliper part, slide it in, put the caliper bolt into the slider pin. The same with this. We're going to snug them down and then torque them to factory spec. So I got a 14mm on the inner pin to hold it from spinning, and a 14mm socket on the actual bolt. I'm going to let it bottom out, top and bottom. Do the same. Then I will torque it to 20 foot-pounds. That's the factory specs. Do the same on the bottom. Now we're going to transfer the flex hose over to the new caliper. So I'm going to get the hook out of the way. It's 14mm. I'm going to use a 14mm socket. You can use a wrench. Make sure you have a catch bucket underneath. Break that free. So you get 2 new copper washers. Make sure you use them. Do not use the old washers. Pull that banjo bolt out. Take the old washer off. This happens to be a double-sided. So I'm going to put a new copper washer on the head of the bolt. Slide it through. Put the next washer. And then I'm going to take that plastic boot out of the new caliper. And you'll notice that there's a nice little pin for that hose to start. Start it by hand. You find that notch, make sure that hose goes right in it. Snug it down, bottom it out. I'm going to snug that up by hand with a wrench. There's no torque spec on this because you've got to seat that banjo bolt into those copper washers. So once it bottoms out, good 1/8 of a turn, should be good. We're going to gravity bleed it, so I'm going to take the protective boot off, the bleeder screw. Make sure you keep that, set it aside. You're going to want to put it back on. 8mm wrench, and I'm going to open this bleeder screw with my catch bucket underneath, and I'm going to let the gravity do its work. So this has been gravity bleeding for about 10 minutes, and you can see there's a little bit of an air bubble coming out every once in a while. And once I feel that it's not burping anymore at all, I'm just going to close that up with my 8mm wrench or socket. Once it bottoms out, just turn it at a little 1/8 of a turn. And then clean that area up. Make sure you put the cover boot back on. And then we will check the brake pedal. And then check for leaks. Now we can put our tire back on. Start them all by hand. And then we'll tighten these up in a star pattern. Then torque them to manufacturer's specifications. Tighten to 76 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Double check. So on this actual vehicle, I need a little funnel. Make sure it's clean of any debris or oils, and then top off your brake fluid. Make sure you replace the cap all the way down, seated properly. With your car in park, pump the brakes several times, start it up, and make sure you get a nice firm brake pedal and it doesn't sink down. Good to go.